Alright, so here's the question. They said describe the beta oxidation of fatty acid, highlighting the four major steps. This is a question from MBC 304. So MBC 304. You get my point. Describe the beta oxidation of fatty acid, highlighting the four major steps. Now, this question is talking about beta oxidation of fatty acid. So I will just explain what beta oxidation of fatty acid is. Then we're also going to highlight the four major steps in beta oxidation of fatty acid. All right, so let's take the main word, beta oxidation of fatty acid. Beta oxidation of fatty acid. Now, from beta oxidation, what do you understand by this statement now? First of all, we have oxidation and we have fatty acid. This word oxidation, what does it mean? What does it mean to oxidize? What does it mean to oxidize? It simply means to burn something, just the way you burn something now. I get my point. When you burn the thing, you're going to release, like, we see energy, like heat. You get my point. So in like manner, what do we get if we should oxidize fatty acid is what? ATP. So when we hear the word oxidation of fatty acid, it simply means that you want to break down fatty acid, you want to burn fatty acid, in order to release ATP. But this time around, they specify the kind of oxidation, the kind of burning, the point in which we burn the fatty acid, the point in which you are going to oxidize the fatty acid, and that is what? At the beta carbon. At the beta carbon. So that's why we now call it beta oxidation of fatty acid. Because there are also other forms of oxidation of fatty acid. There are other forms of oxidation of fatty acid. For example, we have one that is called alpha oxidation. We have one that is called alpha oxidation. We have another one that is called omega oxidation. Okay, so all these ones are other forms of oxidation of fatty acid, but for today what we are discussing is beta oxidation of fatty acid. Beta oxidation of fatty acid, it simply means you want to oxidize fatty acid at the beta carbon. Now at the center here is fatty acid. What do you understand by fatty acid? What are fatty acid? Because we need to know what fatty acid is. We need to know what is the beta carbon in that fatty acid, because it is at that beta carbon we are going to oxidize the fatty acid. It is at the beta carbon of the fatty acid we are going to oxidize it. So we need to know what a fatty acid is. So fatty acid, basically, as we know it, is what? They are derivative of hydrocarbon. Fatty acid are what? They are derivative of what? Of hydrocarbon. So they are derivative of hydrocarbon, meaning that they are derived from hydrocarbon, such that at the end they have we have a functional group called COOH. So if you want to define fatty acid, you can say that fatty acid are derivative of hydrocarbon having COOH as their functional group. Okay, so now let's see this a typical structure of a fatty acid. Then from there we're going to see the beta bond or the beta carbon. Then we're going to see how we're going to break down that beta carbon and release ATP for us. You get the idea? All right, so this is a typical structure of a fatty acid. CH3, CH2, CH2. Like you are going to have a lot of CH2, 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 many of them. So I will just draw the terminal ones now. Let me just assume I'm drawing the ones at the end. CH2, CH2, then COOH. Are you understanding my point now? So there are n numbers of fatty acid. So I don't want to, because of space, you understand? Now, this one is a functional group. Like we said in the definition, they are derivative of hydrocarbon. If you notice, they are only hydrogen and carbon. So your normal hydrocarbon, that is what we call fatty acid. Just that they are not having COOH as their as their functional group. Having COOH as their functional group. Now, the carbon attached to the COOH is called what? The alpha carbon. The carbon attached to the alpha carbon is now called the beta carbon. So if I should put another carbon here, another COH here, what will you call this one? You're going to call this one maybe the gamma. I get my point. Just like Greek alphabet. You get my point now. But of interest now is what? This beta position, the bond between the alpha and the beta. This is the bond of interest. This is the bond we want to break. So we're going to liase this bond. I get my point. Such that when we break the bond, what are we going to get? We're going to get what? How many carbon molecules are these? How many carbon molecules? two carbon molecule B will form what is known as acetyl-CoA, and what is left is a fatty acid chain with two carbon lesser. So we're going to have fatty acid with how many carbon lesser? Two carbon lesser. You get my point, Abi? So those are the two things you will get when you do the first cycle of beta oxidation. I hope you understand it. So when I say beta oxidation, I will come again. It simply means we want to burn up fatty acid. We want to oxidize fatty acid. At what position? At the beta position. Where is the beta position? The beta position is the bond between the alpha and the weighting and the beta carbon. So our whole idea in beta oxidation is such that at the end of the day, we should be able to break this bond. We should be able to what? To break this bond and release what? What are we releasing? A two carbon molecule which we call acetyl-CoA, and what? And a fatty acid that is now two carbon lesser. So we are going to repeat this thing, repeat it until we finish breaking up the fatty acid. That is the whole idea of a beta oxidation of fatty acid. Do you understand my point? So if you are asked what is beta oxidation of fatty acid, in simple words, you will say beta oxidation of fatty acid simply means it's a oxidation process in which fatty acid are being oxidized, particularly at the beta carbon. The beta carbon is that carbon which is between the what? The alpha and the beta bond is that bond between the alpha and the beta carbon. So you know that we this place is alpha because it's attached to the what? To the functional group. The carbon after the alpha carbon, that is, you are counting backward, you get the weighting. The beta carbon, after which you get the weighting, the gamma. Then towards the ending, you are going to get weighting omega carbon. That's why this last carbon is called omega, and if you want to start counting from here, you know something like omega 1, omega 2, omega 3. So not to bother you with that details, I just want you to get the general idea that when we talk about oxidation of fatty acid, particularly the beta oxidation of fatty acid, it simply means that we want to oxidize fatty acid at the beta carbon. Now if this thing is clear, I would like to ship in something first. There's something you need to know. Generally, the body does not usually use fatty acid as, like, on a normal day as a source of fuel. That's not what we use. Our major fuel is what? Glucose, is carbohydrate. Our major fuel is what? Glucose. So our major fuel is what? Glucose, right? So when you now see a case of somebody doing beta oxidation of fatty acid, probably the person is undergoing fasting. The person has not eaten anything into the, like, in the GIT tract. So no glucose is coming from there. So the body have no choice but to start breaking down fatty acid. So anytime you see the idea beta oxidation of fatty acid or breakdown of fatty acid in general, it's a sign that probably there is starvation, or the person has not necessarily starvation. So I don't want to go into starvation like deep, but it means that the person has not eaten. Okay, the person is more like fasting, it's in a fasting state. So the body is looking for other source of energy. Can you get my point now? So if you have that general idea, we'll now go into the stages involved in beta oxidation. What are the stages involved in beta oxidation? What are the stages involved? So we have something like stages in beta oxidation. Now these stages I'm about to write now, they are not the four major steps. So those four major steps is a part of the stage. It's a part of one of the stage. So first of all, the first stage in beta oxidation is called what? It's called what? Mobilization of fatty acid from where? From adipose tissue. Mobilization of fatty acid from where? From adipose tissue. So the second stage now is now what we call the activation of the fatty acid stroke carnitine shuttle. So let me just write carnitine. So we have carnitine shuttle. Then the last stage is now what we now call the main beta oxidation. I get my point. The main beta oxidation. This is the one that I'm not asking you to talk about the four major steps, because there are four steps here. Those steps is what we call the O-hot process. What do I call it? I call it what? The O-hot process. So as we proceed, we are going to see all these basic things, okay, that are very, very simple. So for this first video now, it's more like an introduction. I'm trying to give you an idea of what beta oxidation is. What beta oxidation is. When anybody asks you, my dear, what is beta oxidation? What is beta oxidation? You should be able to say, beta oxidation simply means we want to break down fatty acid at the beta carbon. We want to be breaking the fatty acid to be releasing acetyl-CoA. Each cycle will break it down to release acetyl-CoA. Then we'll do it again on that acetyl-CoA, do it again on that acetyl till we finish the fatty acid. You get my point now? You get it? So that is the whole idea. Why are you doing it? Because you need what? You need what? You need ATP. That is the whole idea. Probably the person is not eating, because the significance of this is that when a person is not taking in glucose, the body will look for other source of energy, and one of the source of energy we will look for is what? Fatty acid, which is stored in what? In adipose tissue. That's why the first stage is what? Mobilization. We need to mobilize the fatty acid from the adipose tissue. Do you understand my point? The reason why I'm mobilizing it is because the site of beta oxidation, I would have shipped that in earlier on. So let me just ship it now. Beta oxidation takes place where? Where does it take place? It takes place where? Majorly in the waiting, majorly in the liver. So you write it here. In the next video, I'll go into it proper. Take place majorly where? In the liver. You get now? All right. So that is it now.